job of assigning people, and we had people calling the pastor of the day freaking out, and they're going, Colin, who is Colin, and where is he at, and how are you guys casting demons out of people? I mean, they really do need care.
What's the follow-up structure for people on the wall, since there's a lot of activity there?
That's a great question. We're developing a prayer card right now that gives them resources for follow-up. Really, the well is a better place. We do deliverance on the wall. It's hard to do deliverance in like a 5 or 10 minute session, but it's possible. If you have a really big manifestation, you're likely to have more warfare after the fact, because that thing has really been knit into that person. Really minor things. You know, I would say 90% of the time, you guys doing deliverance ministry, there's no manifestation. There's no faces, there's no voices, there's no claws. It just goes. Lots of times, and this is extra biblical. I want to be careful to qualify these things. I couldn't prove it from the Bible, and I wouldn't die on this hill. But lots of times they do actually exit through a person's mouth. Sometimes their nose. It's really funny. The reason that we say God bless you after a person sneezes, actually I think is related to this. In the Middle Ages, they believed that a demon could get into a person when they sneeze. They would say God bless you to make sure it didn't. But lots of times when demons exit, they will exit through the mouth. You'll see people heaving, dry heaving. It's common. Occasionally we have people throw up every now and then. And sometimes it can be just the most vile, horrid thing. I've heard of, I haven't experienced myself, people throwing up where they haven't eaten for days. So there's not usually something physical about it, but there can be. So yeah, lots of times it happens that way.
Could I just do a follow-up? Could I make the request that there might be some type of structure for the wall, that if there is a needed follow-up, there would be some type of structure when it's appropriate to capture that person's information, like you said, to walk with them for a little bit. Can I just throw that out for you to pray?
Yeah, we should have, Doreen, we should have that card out in a week, probably, right?
I think she's talking about like a contact card, you know, like they give at the end of service, that the prayer team have that so they can fill out their information. That's a good idea. We could just use the current contact cards that the church has.
Right.
Connect.
We don't do a ton of deliverance on the wall. I mean, we do some. We sure do. Okay, let me see what else I must tell you guys. So all right, say you're praying with a person. So how do you know if a person has a demon? Well, there is the gift of discerning of spirits that we find in 1 Corinthians 12. Some of you have that gift. I have it a little bit. I can sometimes see a demon on a person. I can see sort of a little bit of a pinchedness in their face. I can definitely see a demonic attitude. How do you know if a person has a demon or not? If you feel like suddenly you're dealing with a different individual than you were just a minute ago, sometimes you can see a big shift in the eyes. The eyes go into the soul. Lots of times when you take authority over spirit, a lot of you on the prayer team have done this with me. I'll ask people to look me in the eyes because I want to make sure that I've got a direct line to that thing. Sometimes they will try to put people to sleep, because if the person's asleep, they're sort of offline and they think you can't get to them. There's all kinds of wild things that can happen. But what you want to do once you realize you're dealing with one, and I would advise you not to do it alone. It's better to have somebody praying with you. That's one of the reasons Jesus sent people out in twos. You need to figure out why it's there. Number one, is this person a Christian? If they're not, you know why it's there. Lead them to Christ before you try to deal with the demon. Please, please, please. They will be worse off than they were before, and you'll have a horrible time getting rid of it. You probably won't be able to get rid of it, but you might be able to. But they'll be worse off in the end, just like Jesus taught us they would be. If you're dealing with a Christian, you need to find a stronghold. You need to find why it's there. I rely on the Holy Spirit to tell me that. Unforgiveness is a very primary place to look. God, would you just show this person where there may be unforgiveness in their life, where there's bitterness, where there's anger. I really rely on the Holy Spirit to show me what the issue is. Had a guy I was praying for down front when Pilabachi was here. This was an awesome one, you guys. Praying, couldn't find it, couldn't get there. Finally, all of a sudden, his whole body goes rigid. His eyes roll back in his head like Storm on the X-Men, and he goes, "I was a victim of priest abuse." And I'm like, okay, that we can do. So guess what I had to do next? Who can guess what would you do in that situation? Forgiveness. I had to lead him through forgiveness for that priest. And I just get angry thinking about it. But he had to forgive that guy to get free. Gosh, just putting chill bumps all over me. But once he forgave that priest, it was easy to take authority over the demon. He was laughing, he was crying, the presence of God was all over him, it was awesome, he got completely delivered. But that unforgiveness created a place he was totally victimized. But he had to forgive that priest in order to get free. Isn't that crazy? But that's the world we live in. So find a stronghold, demolish the stronghold. Once you've gotten rid of that stronghold, that whatever that belief is that they've bought into, or whatever that that unforgiveness is, or whatever it may be, then you can get rid of the demon pretty easily. It usually doesn't take very long. I'm not a proponent of spending a lot of time talking to demons. Some people teach that you should quiz the demon and have it tell you all kinds of things, and that's kind of not my deal. I prefer you not to do that, but I'm not going to say hard and fast you can't do it, because occasionally you do have to get some information from them. And know this too, you guys, if you get a really gnarly situation, I mean, we do have people who have a lot of experience and who are trained in this that I can connect you with. So if you can't get it all wrapped up, pray for them, ask God to protect them, to surround them and help them, and get hold of me. And I'll connect you with a team of people that can pray and walk with that person. And if you need to be better equipped, I want you better equipped. And there's no way to do it in an hour like we have today. And you'll see Jesus do amazing things. The final thing I want to say is that it's all about who we know, right? Remember the 7 sons of Sceva, who were the Jewish exorcists? Were they actually casting demons out of people apart from Christ? Yeah, it can be done. A lot of Catholic exorcisms happen that way. And some Pentecostal exorcisms probably happen that way as well. But the demon jumps on these guys and says, you know, Jesus I know, and Paul I know, but who are you? It's all about who we know. It's all about who we know. We know Jesus, we have his authority, and we're able to be his deputies, and we're able to wield the power of his name, and we're able to trample on snakes and scorpions. And that's the way it is. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question. So in your example of forgiveness, how are we to know if we're dealing with just a stubborn attitude of unforgiveness versus a demonic presence, a stronghold of unforgiveness?
Right, that's a great question. Just out of curiosity, who in this room feels like they have the gift of discernment of spirits? You know when there's a demon, you can sometimes see them. Okay, so that's almost 25% of us. So number one thing that I like to do, Sharon, is I like to make sure I've got people around me that have that. I have it to an extent, but it's not my strongest gift. So it's good to be checking with others, hey, what are you sensing, what are you feeling? And number 2, you have to really rely on the Holy Spirit. You just do, because there's no formulas here. There just aren't. But if you're dealing with unforgiveness, whether there's a demon in it or not, we know that it's a sin, right? And we know that it's necessarily impeding that person's relationship with Jesus and the people around them. So once it's revealed, you've got to get them to forgive. We have to as Christians.
Oh, I agree. I just didn't know. It almost sounds like the default for what we're calling sin, and we're using this one of unforgiveness, is that it's a demon. There's a foundation. There's a demon, a demonic foundation there, and I don't think that to be true. Just based on my background of counseling, I mean, there's years and years of a family of origin issue and other things.
Absolutely.
So when do you go to the sin versus the demon?
Right, and I completely agree. And I wouldn't say the demon is ever foundational for unforgiveness. I would say that unforgiveness creates a foundation for the demon.
Gives it a legal right.
Yeah, it builds a structure for the demon to live in, basically. Just because the structure's there does not mean there's a demon there, but there could be. So I mean, usually, unless I feel like there's a demon there or I see one. So common demonic manifestations, and we can go through this a little bit more, facial grimaces, weird sort of gyrations with the head. Claws is a really big one. Other voices, things like that. Yes, G.
Yeah. One thing that's been quick for me in a quick situation like on the wall is when you see something start and you ask the Lord, quick, where do they partner with the kingdom of this world? And just asking that one question, he'll show you quick what the root is quick, and you can go to it really fast, whether it's unforgiveness or whether they need to repent, or maybe they partnered like you did earlier in your life, but you'll get it quick, and then you can take authority over it. And the Lord was showing me this morning before I came, this was really awesome new insight, but he said, Judy, on the cross, when I died, my blood was shed. I didn't just die for my friends, I died for my enemies, and because I died for my enemies, that level of love that in the power of Jesus' love, I prayed that his love would dispel the darkness. And I just commanded it, and tears were running down my face for this poor guy. So I just shouted, the power of Jesus' love will dispel this darkness, and he just stopped. And he stood there. That power of Jesus' love, that demonstration on the cross, stopped him in his tracks. And then I could say, Jesus loves you, and build into it. It was so far gone. So later he told me that he had visions of strangling me to death. And the demons he had been enjoying, like we said earlier in your life, he had been enjoying them. They actually took him over that day, and he couldn't control them any longer. And he got scared that he couldn't control, and he was propelled by the demon to kill me.
Yeah.
But the power of Jesus' love is another way you can just declare quick. I declare the power of Jesus' love into you right now to dispel this darkness. And that power of his love has created an all evil on earth. So it's another quick tool
That's right.
we can use in an emergency.
Yeah, the blood of Jesus. I tell you what, I'm gonna pray, just in case anybody